Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're having a look at another devblog for the next major update, and this is for a vehicle I've been looking forward to for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of naval players have too. This is the Dunkerque. It is a French battleship at rank 6, and it's going to be end of the line, but it's also going to be really fun. One of the issues with the French naval forces in blue water is when you get to the battleships, they are very much outmatched compared to pretty much anything else that is there, and hopefully the Dunkerque can reset some of this balance. Otherwise, it's going to kind of suck, but at least it should have a fun little playstyle. The cool thing about the Dunkerque is it has all of its main guns on the front of it, so you can angle accordingly and have a good time with trying to dodge shots while also putting out a ton of damage yourself. It is very much a unique experience when it comes to War Thunder, apart from maybe some of the British destroyers that are set up in the same way. The other parts of the Dunkerque we'll go into in this video, and also let's have a look at the history of this vehicle. Following the end of the First World War and the subsequent signature of the Washington Naval Treaty in 1922, France was faced with a challenging situation for its navy. On the one hand, the pre-World War I dreadnoughts required immediate replacement, while on the other hand, the newly signed treaty imposed severe restrictions on the construction of new capital ships. Furthermore, French shipbuilders had to consider various operational requirements for the future design, especially keeping in mind their competitiveness against new Italian and German warships. The ship's design changed several times as French engineers experimented with various concepts in order to meet the requirements set out for the program. With the design finalized in 1932, two battleships of what would become known as the Dunkerque class were ordered for construction for the French Navy. The lead ship of the class was laid down shortly after in the dockyard at Brest. Dunkerque was subsequently launched in October of 1935 and commissioned with the French Navy by the end of the following year. During the ship's brief interwar service, it took part in several naval exercises and visited a number of ports prior to the outbreak of the Second World War. At the time hostilities broke out between Germany and France, Dunkerque was primarily tasked with hunting down Deutschland-class cruisers, for which the Dunkerques had been purpose-built. Nevertheless, as military action against France became increasingly likely, Dunkerque was ordered to the port of Mers el-Kebir in spring of 1940, where she would be on standby to oppose any operation by the Italian military. However, after France signed an armistice with Germany in June of 1940, British forces launched an attack on the French fleet at Mers el-Kebir to prevent them falling into German hands. Severely damaging Dunkerque in the process, the warship was eventually towed to Toulon for heavy repairs, which advanced slowly due to a lack of resources. After the occupation of Vichy France by Germany, the crew of Dunkerque scuttled the ship to prevent its capture. Dunkerque remained scuttled in Toulon for the remainder of the war until the ship was finally stricken in 1955. So the Dunkerque is actually really cool, and the reason for this is its layout of its guns and also its general design decisions. The first part of this is the main caliber guns. On the front of the ship you have two quad turrets, which house good old 13-inch guns. So that's its main armament. It's all stuck on the front of the machine in two separate towers. And I don't think we've had quad guns before in War Thunder, and also, apart from like some British destroyers, we've never had such a heavy machine have access to this type of weaponry. Now this can work in a positive way, and it can also work in a negative way. Basically, having all of your turrets in the same place can lead to problems where it's very easy to know where to target your machine, and if the Dunkerque's armor doesn't stand up, and to be honest, it doesn't have the best armor in the world, it means that people will be able just to hammer it and also ammo rack them pretty easily. The other part of it, though, is you can make your silhouette incredibly small because both of your guns can straight up just fire forward, and that means that your turrets, you can get all of your guns on target while also having a very tiny silhouette. So from distances, this is going to work out incredibly well for people. The Dunkerque itself isn't exactly crazy wide either, so your silhouette will be tiny. And one of the issues in War Thunder is in order to get all your guns on target, usually you have to increase your silhouette because of the back guns, whereas the Dunkerque doesn't have this issue. The secondary guns on the Dunkerque, it has a bunch of 130mm cannons. They are 16 of them, which are spread out around the place in twin and quadruple turrets. So those will be also really cool to see how they set themselves up. They're more on the middle and the back of the machine, so that will be quite nice. And then also the AA is not good. It's one of those areas which is pretty rough for France when it comes to its battleships and also when it comes to its destroyers. They have these non-automatic 37mm caliber cannons and also some large caliber machine guns. These 37mm can be found on quite a lot of destroyers, and they're just not great. They really suck on the reload, and they don't really keep you alive. But at the same time, because of the war, France didn't really develop a ton of AA armaments, which were a lot more useful. That's why when you look in the game, the ones which do have useful armaments are normally ones which were either used after the war or used during the war by the Free French and were upgraded by the Allies. The other part, which is interesting for the Dunkerque, is of course its armor. Now, the story of the Dunkerque basically goes like this. Germany has these new Deutschland-class battlecruiser, battleship things. They're really good. We should counter them. Okay, let's build the Dunkerque. So they build the Dunkerque. And then Italy comes along and they have a new battleship class. And they're like, okay, we need to modify the design and try and help it against those machines. And that's what they did. So that's specifically what the machine was built for. This means it has a main belt of 225mm plating, and on the turrets and also the barbettes, it has 330 and 310mm of steel plating respectively. So that's pretty good. Nowadays we do have 15, 16-inch guns, which we'll just go through that. So that's going to be a bit of a problem with it. But as I said, the main survivability you have in this thing is the fact that you're going to have a tiny silhouette and you can still keep up all of your firepower. And it's going to be really cool to see how this works, because France Blue Water has very nice destroyers. Okay, they're really fun to play. They have very nice guns and generally are satisfying, I would say, in terms of how many times they kind of nuke the enemy and annihilate them. Also, the cruisers are not too bad. They're a bit light, they don't have a ton of armor, but once again, they can pack a decent punch and they can do alright. I would say they're probably slightly worse than the average, but overall quite nice. Very similar to the German destroyers when it comes to the Nürnberg and also stuff like the Leipzig. The battleships are weak. I don't know how else to put it. They are still on, kind of the Dreadnought or, a very similar battleship area, or the World War I battleships, where a lot of other nations, whether it comes to their battle cruisers or battleships, they are approaching or even in the Second World War era. So the Dunkerque is one of the steps towards that, and also offers something completely new for captains, which will be, hopefully really nice, and maybe not meta-defining, because we obviously have some very, very powerful machines right now, but it gives France an option to actually be competitive instead of just getting your head smashed in, which unfortunately is a bit of a problem for their battleships. They are just worse than the competition because of the BR decompression, but also because they just don't have anything there to actually fight with. So that kind of sucks, and hopefully they improve. The interesting thing about the Dunkerque, though, is it is quite fast for a battleship. It can go 30 knots, which is 54.6 kilometers an hour, but generally I don't put a lot of thought into speed of these ships. They are so big, it's very hard to dodge shots from range, and so speed isn't really like a huge thought in my mind. I remember when the Italians came out, and one of the greatest things about them that they tried to kind of advertise in game is they were really fast. The destroyers, you know, were like 2 kilometers faster than the competition, and they just still got smacked anyway, so it wasn't really a huge thing. The major part of this is how easy is it going to be to ammo rack this thing, and also how quickly can you make that silhouette tiny, and are there any firing angles where you can't work with this machine? And of course, you know, in terms of secondary armaments and stuff, yep, planes will kind of destroy this thing, but at the BR that the Dunkerque is going to be at, which is probably going to be around 6-7, there is plenty of AA fire that can come from other ships to keep this thing alive. It's fantastic to see the Dunkerque. I hope we see its sister ship too, and also many other really fun and interesting French designs as well. The coastal tech tree has been nice to kind of go through some of it, and the Dunkerque will be a lovely crown on top of the blue water tree. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.